The mainstream media is not playing the clips like conservative media is playing the clips. They don't want you to see her failure of an interview. Now, was Kamala Harris's interview a disaster? The answer to that question is no. Kamala Harris's interview was not a disaster. But it wasn't good. It wasn't polished. It wasn't crisp. It wasn't clean. It wasn't showing us a leader. She was long on words and short on policy. Go figure. It's Kamala Harris, right? So let's play a couple clips of her. And this is them asking her. She's been vice president for 3.5 years now. Why has nothing changed?
My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it.
You give $25,000 to every first-time home buyer? Where are we going to get the money for that? Is that really government's role to be handing out gifts? Handing out money? Because really what you're doing is taking that money from rich people paying their taxes and giving it to poor people who in the end, and I promise you this, will not be able to pay their mortgage. I promise you this. Here's how I know this. Back in the 80s, I believe it was, my parents were members of a very nice country club called Westchester Country Club in Rye, New York. Now it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars to join, I think. Back then, after the 70s, they were going through some times they were letting people join for free. They did a study like 5 or 6 years later. Every single person they let in for free was no longer at the club and were no longer paying monthly dues. Everybody that came in and paid an initiation, most of them, the large majority of them, still at the club, still paying dues. The reality is you give something away for free to somebody, they're not going to be able to make their payments. They're going to fail in the end. That's a good example of how that happens, right? So Kamala Harris wants to give away $25,000. Yeah, right.
In a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors.
Hold on a second. Inflation at 3%. Inflation when Donald Trump left office was at 1.5%, maybe a little less. So it's double what it was under President Trump, and we're now 3.5 years later. But don't forget this. Inflation went to 9%. Everything now costs 20, 30, 40% more, something 60% more than it cost when President Trump was in office. So they and their policies, stopping fracking, raising the corporate, wanting to raise the corporate tax rate, and the uncertainty that stems from them threatening to do that, all right? All of the uncertainty. You got gas prices. You got the influx of government money everywhere. So that's raising the cost of goods. What happens? Inflation goes to 9%. So now it's back down to 3%, and they think this is some kind of a victory. Remember, folks, inflation is the rate at which it's growing. So 3% inflation means prices are still going up, not coming down, still going up. Come on, Harris.
Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened.
I would not be there, Kamala Harris, talking about what Donald Trump didn't do when this country was in the best shape it had ever been in under President Trump. You have some gall to call this stuff out like this. So this is Kamala Harris now talking about what the United States needs, okay?
New way forward and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago.
An era that started a decade ago? Well, last I checked, the decade ago, President Trump was only in office for 4 years. Kamala Harris has been in office, well, let's just say 4 years, okay? What does that leave? 2 years left for the decade. Who was there? Barack Obama. So you've got 6 out of the last 10 years was run by Democrats. And let's go a little further. 12 out of the last 16 years run by Democrats. And she's going to say that Donald Trump ruined everything? Do they really want the American people to believe this? Yes. I don't think the American people should believe it. I hope they watch this program of why not to believe it. I like just ripping through some of these because she's such an idiot.